Hi everyone, I'm Lauren and this is my channel, Miss Sunny Gamer. Today I'm doing a video about the books I've read so far in July. Like I said in my June wrap-up video, doing it in 2 videos I think is better, so that's what I'm going to try and do now. If it does end up being better, then I'll keep doing it like this, and if it doesn't, then I'll do 1 video at the end of each month for a reading wrap-up. But considering how much I read in a month, I think it will be better in 2. We'll see how it goes. Before I get started, sorry if I sound a little meh. I'm a little bit sick today, but I didn't really want to miss a video. I'm not so sick where I have to stay in bed or anything, just a little off. Anyway, so far in July I've read 6 books total. All of these books I read for the Medievalathon, which I talked about in another video. I'll leave a link to that. I did switch up a few books on what I'm counting what book for what prompt, but pretty much all of the books I read this month were mentioned in my other video, so it's not like I totally changed it or anything. Anyway, let's get started with the first book. To start off with, I quickly read The Fire Within by Krista Lacey. This is the first book in a middle grade series. I think it's called The Last Dragon Chronicles. This series starts off with a guy named David who's a college student, and he decides to rent a space in a home. He starts living with a mom and her daughter. The mom also makes these clay dragons that are really lifelike and really cool. This is kind of about David as he's learning that there's more to these clay dragons than they appear. Ooh. That's kind of the sort of premise of it from what I could quickly explain of it. This is a book I originally tried to read in grade 5, but I really didn't like it and I DNF'd it and then skipped to the second book in the series and really liked that. And so this was kind of a way for me to go back to it and figure out what I didn't like about it. And reading this, I can see why I didn't like it. I don't absolutely hate it now, but the main problem with this is that it doesn't center around the dragons very much, at least in this book. For most of the book, David is writing a story about squirrels, and he's interacting with the daughter, and she really likes the squirrels and wants to help the squirrels, and there's a squirrel that's injured, and so they gotta capture the squirrel, and all about squirrels. Why is it so focused on squirrels? I don't understand. It's just also so weird because in the front flap of the book synopsis, it doesn't mention anything about squirrels. It mentions that David's writing the story, but it doesn't allude to the fact that it's just squirrels all the dang darn time. It's so weird. That being said, I did like this. I didn't love it. The squirrel thing didn't detract that much from it. It's just there wasn't anything that super hooked me into it very well. Maybe I was looking forward to more dragon-y shenanigans, and that did end up happening more towards the end. None of the characters are super likable to me. None of them are unlikable too much. Maybe the daughter sometimes. But yeah, it's kind of hard to figure out what I feel exactly about the book. I guess it's kind of in the middle of the road for me, so that's why I rated it a 3 out of 5 stars. And I almost forgot that I read this for the Medievalathon prompt to read a book with a dragon on the cover, because it indeed has a dragon on the cover. The next book I read was a manga, Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, Volume 2, by Kukyo Shinja. I still don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but there you go. I read this for the Medievalathon prompt to read a book with something pointy on the cover, because her horns are pointy. The main premise behind this is that a woman named Kobayashi helps out this dragon, and the dragon ends up feeling indebted to Kobayashi, so she becomes the maid for Kobayashi. Dragons aren't really used to human life, so just shenanigans. It's very silly, lighthearted, and a little bit pervy a little bit in this one. There's definitely a lot of fan service, and people get naked. Woo! This is kind of another one that's a little hard for me to explain my feelings on. The art style is fine enough. And I do kind of like the characters, I guess. The shenanigans they get into are kind of funny sometimes too. I have a really hard time of talking about things that I don't really love and I don't really hate either, so I don't know. Maybe the humor didn't work with me as much as it should have, because this is definitely a comedy series, so yeah. I just gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book worked a lot better for me, and that is Yotsuba Volume 14 by Kiyohiko Azuma. This is a slice of life kind of contemporary manga series. It follows a dad and his daughter named Yotsuba, and they just kind of get into silly shenanigans. Yotsuba is just adorable and has all these silly ideas about things and gets into all sorts of trouble, so it's a really lighthearted comedy type manga. This meshed with my tastes a lot better than Miss Kobayashi. It's kind of hard to explain why I like it more. I guess it's like taste and humor, I guess. It's very wacky, but kind of just like pure, I guess, because Yotsuba doesn't know any better for something. She's just a little kid. But she's not annoying about it either, so it's so sweet. The art style in this is really good too. It gets really detailed in certain points and is really well drawn. I had no complaints about this at all. I had a blast reading it, and so I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. My only complaint though is that there's no more right now. I need to wait, and who knows when the next volume will come out. Wah. Also, I read this for the Medievalathon prompt to read something with red on the cover. The next book I read was The Golems Eye by Jonathan Stroud, or Stroud? I don't know how it's pronounced. This is the second book in the Bartimus trilogy, and originally I was going to read this for the prompt to read a book that is yellowed over time, but I decided to switch this over to the shiny book prompt because of another book that I read that's coming up. This series follows a young magician named Nathaniel. He wants to be a really great wizard, and he's kind of stuck up about it. He's not the nicest of characters. In the first book, he summons a high-level genie named Bartimus to steal an artifact for him, but Nathaniel discovers that this artifact is going to be used for a devious plot, and he needs to try and stop the plot and save the world, or England, or wherever they are. This book follows the first one, and Nathaniel is still learning to become a better and better magician, and he's trying to do work in the magician kind of government sector. In this one, he has to solve these terrifying attacks that are happening down in the city, and why are they happening? Like, ooh. He has to discover if it's like the resistance that's behind it, who is a group that is trying to bring down the magician rule, or is it someone else? This book also follows Kitty and her kind of perspective on things, and as well it also switches to Bartimus's point of view as he is summoned again for this book. I really liked the first book, however this one wasn't as good for me. It was a lot slower, which doesn't really help. But my main issue with this is that Bartimus is the best character, hands down, in the whole series, at least so far. However, with the introduction of Kitty as a main point of view, it left less time for Bartimus to have his say. Since in the first book it was just Nathaniel and Bartimus's point of view, it was more closer to a 50-50 point of view. And however, in this book, since there's a third perspective from Kitty, he gets even less time to have his point of view, and I feel like his portion of the book is less than a third if it was an even split. A lot of this book really dragged on for me until kind of the halfway point when things start to kick up a notch. And so I thought that the resolution wasn't really that great to me. It was kind of like, alright, cool, some of this was a setup for the third book, to see you next time, and It's not very nice of a way to end a book for me. I'm fine if it doesn't stand on its own and you need the third book to finish up things, but it just kind of whimpered off, oh yeah, by the way, read the next book. So this took me a long time to finish, even though it's middle grade-y type book and it's pretty easy to read. And because of that, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The last 2 books I read are both in the same manga series, and that is Chobits Volume 1 and Chobits Volume 2, both of which are by a mangaka group called Clamp. For the Medievalathon, I decided to do Volume 1 for the yellowed book prompt. As you can see, this is Yotsuba here and this is Chobits. It has yellowed. And then I decided to use Volume 2 for the prompt to read a thick paperback, because it is quite chunky. Chobits takes place in Japan, and it's set in a time where computers as we know it now have been almost completely replaced with persocoms. Persocoms are extremely lifelike looking androids. They almost seem to have personalities. They're very big in society, and almost everyone has at least one persocom. The main character, Hideki, is a college student who comes across one of these persocoms just laying in the garbage. He decides to bring it home and try and fix it up and use it. He discovers that this persocom has had their memory totally wiped and decides to name her Chi based off of the only word she can say when she is initially booted up by him. As Hideki learns more and more about Chi, he slowly finds out that Chi may be a little bit more of an advanced and special persocom than he initially realized. Throughout the book, there's also questions almost like what it means to be a human, and is it okay to love someone that isn't actually alive? And Hideki talks to a bunch of people that he knows that have had different experience with persocoms and their feelings about them. And he's slowly kind of realizing what he thinks about them himself and how to deal with those feelings and what he thinks is right. This series is a reread for me, and I think I read it in like 2011 or so. I really liked it then, but I think I understand it a little bit more now than I did then. Some of the themes in here didn't really click with me until now. There's just kind of a bunch of these ideas that are explored in the series that are much more interesting thinking about it than when I first read it. Like in this society, almost everyone has a persocom, and they rely and like these persocoms so much that many of them don't even hang out with people anymore. They just hang out with their persocom. On the flip side though, most people don't treat persocoms with any sort of dignity and respect that a normal person would. If a persocom is damaged, it's just, oh, let's recycle them and get the latest new model. And there's a few other things that kind of show a lack of respect to them, sort of. Like one thing that I missed in my initial reading that I kind of was like, huh? And in this reading, on persocoms, they often have serial numbers on somewhere on them. What's weird to me and kind of shows this juxtaposition with liking persocoms and not respecting them, kind of, is that usually these serial numbers are placed like on their boobs or near their crotch kind of area. And people will look in those areas like, oh, it's no big deal, they're just persocoms, even though everything about them looks basically the same as a regular human, other than they have these ears that stick out prominently. However, even with that said, there are newer models that are getting smaller and smaller. The ear data ports, I think they're called. And so you can't even use that as a signifier that they are persocoms. So it's definitely a series with a lot of like hidden meat on there, and I think it would be hard to enjoy this maybe if you didn't get that. And so overall, I really like this actually. I wouldn't say this was the best manga series ever for me, but I really enjoyed it, and I can see why I enjoyed it somewhat back then, and I'm glad I kept it and had another reread of this. I gave both books a 4 out of 5. With that, that is all of the books that I've read so far in this month. Hopefully I'll be reading many more to come in the next few weeks. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about these books, if you have read any of them. And thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again for another video. Bye!